Good morning, sunshine. Welcome to the Cupofcurious podcast with Will, where we talk pop culture, music, movies, faith, and more. So grab your favorite overpriced caffeinated drink and join the conversation. This is the Cupofcurious podcast. You're on, Will.
Hey family, God bless you. What's up? Welcome to the Cupofcurious podcast. And today is today's the morning. It's another late night recording. It's currently 1:37 a.m. And kind of like last time, it's because I was cooking. Then after that, I showered up. And I really just wanted to go to bed. But I have to keep my commitment with this podcast because, like I said, first quarter of this year took so much out of me and it robbed me of so much. So I just want to stay committed to this thing because this podcast was supposed to come out back in January, and that's when everything kind of hit the fan. But that's besides the point. So today, first of all, like last time, I said I'm not going to mention a drink unless I'm drinking something different. And I honestly am not even drinking nothing now. But I will talk about a drink I had yesterday. So I'm probably going to butcher the name, but it's a Vietnamese drink called Soda Gua Hat Ga. And I think if you're Vietnamese listening to this, I apologize. But this drink, what it is, it's egg yolk, condensed milk, mixed with club soda. And at first when I tasted it, it was funky because you could taste the egg. But then at the same time, it tasted kind of good. And for the record, some of you may be hearing this saying, well, wait a minute, Will, I thought you was on a diet. I am. I diet Monday to Friday. Or I don't like using the term diet. I eat healthy. I eat sensibly Monday through Friday. And on the weekends, I allow myself to indulge a little bit. And yesterday, I went to a Vietnamese restaurant to get some pho, or that soup, that bone broth soup, which is so good, by the way. A banh mi sandwich, and that soda. And just in case you're wondering, if you're new to the podcast, why am I mentioning a drink? It's called Cupofcurious because when it comes to drinks, I love trying new things. And so I try to try new things while I'm on the podcast, but that doesn't always happen. There's been times where I've just drank water, and that's not really exciting. But this drink was, and I just want to tell you guys about it. So if you're ever in the Philadelphia area, in Adams Avenue, there is a restaurant called Pho Ha Saigon. Or I think it's just called Pho Saigon. I'll probably put the address below if you're in the Philadelphia area. And they're one of the better pho restaurants in Philadelphia. And it's packed almost every day. And I think they give a good amount of food for the money. I mean, pho is not expensive at all. But anyway, that's enough of the promotion because I'm not being paid to say it. But they are a pretty good place to go to. I ordered from them. I've got them delivered. And the drink was pretty dope. And there's other drinks on the menu that I want to try. So there's that. And for those of you who follow me personally, you know that next week I will be going to Brookland, Washington, D.C. for the first time. And it will be really the first time I'm traveling out of state, like without all my family. My mother and father will be staying here at home, and me and my sister will be going to Brookland. And that will be because of, initially it was just going to be her and her friend for a concert. I don't know the artist. And it was pretty much like, well, June, if you want to come, you can. By the way, June is my nickname. And I jumped on it, and I'm actually kind of excited. I'm excited about the idea of like going to a different state. You know, we don't do that too often in my family. It's something I would like to do in the future, just travel more and even do the podcast in different states. That'd be pretty cool. Speaking of which, I was actually trying to do this particular episode, in a Barnes & Noble's. I called a Barnes & Noble's downtown, and the girl was kind of like, I guess, like thrown back by my question because nobody does that, I guess. I just thought it'd be cool to like do a little setup or like in the corner of the Barnes & Noble's where they also share Starbucks and just do it there. Maybe they think it'll garner too much attention or whatever. Like, by no means am I a big shot in terms of podcasting. But you never know, it might be one day. Hey. Anyway, about to go 5 minutes in here without even getting to our topic. And our topic is a doozy because in this month of October where everything is spooky, scary, and stuff like that, I want to talk about ghosts, spirits, phantasms, whatever you call them. So, for the record, I want to throw this out there. I don't celebrate Halloween, not anymore anyway. I used to when I was younger. The very last time me and my family, well, I should say me, celebrated Halloween, man, I was probably in my early teens. And I remember this much. The last costume I dressed up as was a hippie. I was a hippie. I had the long hair. I had the sunglasses, tie-dye shirt, jeans, and me and my aunt, we had went to a party, a Halloween party, and they had a costume contest. And there were people dressed as Dracula and zombies and stuff like that. But for some bizarre reason, this lady really liked the way I dressed, and she gave me the award. And I'm like, lit. I mean, we wasn't using that term back then, but it's like, I won. And I think it was because for the simple fact that I was wearing sunglasses. And so, like, I didn't have to look at nobody and be, like, judged or embarrassed. So I just let loose. I was dancing. I was doing the electric slide. Anything I thought that a hippie would do. I kept holding up the peace sign as if, like, that I was stereotyping hippies so bad that day. But I won. I won the contest. And I don't even know what it was I won. I think I won candy. I don't think money was involved. Anyway, so I don't celebrate it no more as I got older, and that's primarily due to spiritual reasons. Now, as Christians or believers, whatever you want to call yourself, it's natural to believe in the supernatural. All right, so if you become a believer, then you're believing that there's this supernatural being that we call God or Yahweh. That's what I prefer to call him. I call him Abba Yahweh. I pray. I use that term, but I use God for people who are not too familiar. And you have to believe that his son died and came back to life, which is indeed a supernatural act. You have to believe in the Holy Ghost, which is a supernatural being. You have to believe in the enemy, Satan, that is, supernatural in his own right, and his demons, which are supernatural. What I don't believe in is what we're calling ghosts in terms of the spirits of dead people. I don't believe in those. I don't think those are a thing. And here's why. This is my primary belief. That when we see these television shows about ghost hunters, or we see these videos on YouTube about, haunted areas and stuff like that, it's not that I don't believe those things are happening. Now, I do believe some people make it up, or there are some people who are just, yanking our chains and just doing some sort of tricks. I do believe that happens. I do believe that there is something happening there, especially if it is legitimate, if what they're experiencing is true. From the door slamming to stuff falling off from cabinets or whatever. You know how it is. If you're here, please give us a sign. I think what it is, what I truly believe what it is that these are demons that are just messing with people. You have to think about it this way. A demon's job is to, first of all, to take us down. In terms of, like, they know their time is almost up, so they're trying to bring us down with them, because that's what Satan does. He sends them out to bring us down with them. But what they're also trying to do is to keep us away from God in every sense of the word. Meaning, instead of us, like, relying on God or going to church or what have you, they rather have us seek psychics and mediums, or, grab the Ouija board and try to communicate with the other side. And unfortunately, we do that a lot. People do that a lot. Why? Because it's entertaining. Demons don't care that they're entertaining you as long as you're not, going back to God. As long as you're not turning to God, they'll entertain you. They'll roll a ball for you. They'll knock off a glass cup for you. As long as you're not seeking the Father. I'm sorry for the brief pause there, guys. I just realized that because of what I'm speaking of, I needed to cover myself and pray on it, because this is something very deep. So anyway, yes. So these spirits, these evil beings, these things that used to be angels, because remember, God casted them down with Satan. They're willing to entertain you as long as you are not seeking God. And even as far as these quote unquote ghosts of dead people or ghosts of our loved ones, because you see that a lot too. People are thinking they're being haunted by, their great grandmother or their dead uncle or whatever the case may be. And I've said this to a person before, a friend of mine, and she got very upset about it because she thinks I'm wrong. And so I got to be careful when I mention this kind of thing, because I know some people believe this stuff, and even though I don't think they're right in believing that stuff, it's still, a matter of respect. But anyway, when you see those kind of things of, oh, grandma's talking to me and she's telling me she's okay. Again, I believe personally, those are just demons messing with you. Yeah, haha, she really thinks her grandma's talking to her. She's not seeking God, she's seeking psychics and mediums to talk to her quote unquote grandma. Ha ha ha, let's mess with her some more. And I think that's what they do. And unfortunately, it works on a lot of people. Because people are hiring mediums or people who can, whisperers, whatever they're calling themselves, is to quote unquote contact the dead, when really they're just engaging these demons to interact with them. And it's scary because and I've mentioned this before when we've talked about horror movies, what some people are calling entertaining is a reality for believers. Okay. It's like, another way to put it, as you guys know, I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan, but I know at the end of the day, at least for me personally, what I watch on film or when I play the video game is just entertainment at the end of the day, because there's no demons that manifest themselves in the way we see in Ghostbusters. Like, if you've ever seen the movie, there is no Slimer, there is no Marshmallow Man. None of that stuff is happening because it's entertainment, it's comedy. That's why I personally feel no conviction when I see that movie, and I'm comfortable with that movie, and that's why I'm a huge fan of it. I'm a collector. I think if you follow my social media, you've seen that I've posted my stuff. Anyway, we have to be careful because this isn't a movie. This isn't, entertainment. You're provoking something spiritual. You have to be extremely cautious with that, because that can be very dangerous, because we see some of these, quote unquote, I'm saying that a lot. We see these hauntings, and some of these videos are, to be honest, some of them are really scary. They do make you jump. They do make you feel tense when you're watching them, but that's because there's an atmosphere there that you're welcoming first and foremost. But because also, if the person who's filming the event isn't, playing a prank or trying to manipulate this stuff by their own means, these demons can get real vicious. And as a person who's witnessed, on several occasions, my pastor, casting out demons out of people, it's a pretty scary sight. Because speaking personally, the two I recall the most, one was years ago. It was a woman. And when they casted the spirit out of her, she was writhing on the floor like a snake. She was shaking violently, and she almost broke one of the benches. It was bad what she had. Another one that I got to see, I guess, in a more personal, not personal, but more up close, because I was in the church. The pastor had asked for everybody to leave the church except for those who were, with, for those she felt like she could be in there. Me being one of them, I was in there, and she started to cast the spirit out of this guy, and he kept falling back and getting back up, and there was a lot of dry heaving on his part. I don't know what was in him, but the pastor made it very clear that she wanted all the doors closed. There was nothing, fantastical about what was happening. There wasn't, no flashing lights. There was no twisting 360 head twist or nothing like that. But what was happening was a genuine casting out of a demon. And this guy, at the end, like I said, a lot of dry heaving. And it was tied to something that he was wearing, I believe. A piece of jewelry he was wearing. And just seeing that, it was so surreal, for the simple fact that, you hear about this stuff and you watch this stuff on television and you see it one way, but then when you see it in real life, I'm sorry guys, I hit the I hit my mic stand. You see this stuff on television, and you see it in movies, and you see it one way, and when you see it actually done, the atmosphere is ridiculous. It's very hard to describe. The atmosphere is very thick. It could be hot. It's not a place for anybody who's not spiritually prepared to be at. And so that's why sometimes it just bewilders me knowing that some people are willingly, they want to walk into that. Now, granted, I know that there are some man-made haunted houses that they do for the kids, and at the end it's just people dressed up as whatever, grabbing kids, scaring them. And I understand that that's not exactly, a haunted house. But then you have places like here in Philadelphia, we have the state penitentiary, which I don't know if it still is, but it was regarded as one of the most haunted places in the world, and they let people go in. And the issue I have with those kind of places is that you go in there, and yeah, you have fun, you scream, you jump, whatever. But to me, when you say haunted, that means a demon's playground. And just like, kids go to a playground, and when they're done, they leave with their mom and dad. When the demons are done playing, they could come back with you, and you bring them to your home. And some people are just, they don't care about that. Now, here's the interesting part about that. And I've mentioned this so many times, in whether I preached it or mentioned it to my youth group, or young adults, actually. And that is, when you're so disconnected from God, when you are far from God, you don't notice when a demon is like hanging around you. You don't notice when those things are around you because you're so used to being absent or disconnected from God. You don't notice it. It's like it's kind of hard to find an example, but it's like it's like when you have a negative influential friend, but you hang around with them so long, and you're so used to their character and their behavior that you don't see them as a negative influence. You just see them as a friend. It's kind of like the same thing with those demons. That little voice in your head that tells you to do the things you shouldn't be doing. You get so used to it that it's just like, oh, it's not even there. And scary in a scary sense. You feel like, oh, that's just me. That's my character. It's not you. It's not your character. The Bible tells us that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but a spiritual one. So sometimes when we see people act the way they do, it's not the person, it's the spirit behind that person. Granted, it depends on what they're doing. So when a person is like viciously angry or strongly depressed, it's not them, it's the spirit within them. And that's something I want to talk about maybe in another podcast, is Christians and depression, because there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to that. But back to the topic at hand. When we go to those kind of things, haunted houses or legitimate places that are called haunted, we can bring things back home with us. And like I said, we're so used to being disconnected from God that we don't notice that they're there. But for some people who maybe live with other people who have a strong spiritual life, they have a strong prayer life, they're, whether it's your parents or maybe a brother or a sister or even a roommate, and you bring in that spirit back in, and you don't really care that it's there, they feel it. And then they have to end up fighting what you brought into the house, what you brought into the apartment, what you brought into the room. And you feel that. When you have a deep relationship with God and you're trying your very best to be integrated with God, you notice spiritual changes in the atmosphere. You notice shifts in the atmosphere. Even when you walk into certain places, now I'm not talking about haunted houses, I'm talking about like certain stores or whatever the case is, you can feel that kind of heaviness in your heart. That's why some Christians or believers, especially like Spanish ones, they tend to avoid going into what we call botanicas, or I think that is the English word, botanics. Anyway, it's like stores that sell, statues of saints, and they sell Buddhas, and they sell all this stuff. They sell all things spiritual. and you walk in there, you feel that heaviness because you know something ain't right in there. Now, personally speaking, there's been I do a lot of my shopping in the at a place called, well, not a lot. I used to buy my jewelry at a place called Spencer's. Some of you know about Spencer's. It's Spencer's Gifts and something else, I think it's just called Spencer's Gifts. Anyway, I go to Spencer's when I want to buy, like, you know, I love long beanie caps. Those caps that sag. I love those things. I sometimes I buy my jewelry from Spencer's. And I never have a problem going there, really. Until one time, I forget which mall it was. I don't want to badmouth any malls because it's not the mall's fault. But I remember I went to a certain mall where there was a Spencer's. And I probably took 2 to 5 steps into that store. And I felt something in there that wasn't right. Now, mind you, I've been to a Spencer's store before. I know that they have, you know, different things like pop culture, cartoons, movies, horror movie stuff. They got jewelry, they got cartoon stuff, they got Star Wars stuff. They have stuff for everybody there. I also know that in the back, they have things for adults. They have things to spice up the bedroom situation. Anyway, and honestly, that doesn't bother me because I know that's what some people do. Anyway, but for some reason, this particular Spencer's, something in there didn't sit right with me. I didn't give a chance to look around, but I didn't bother looking in there. It was the same heaviness I felt when I was in the same place with my pastor, in the church with my pastor, while she was casting out the spirit out that guy. And I'm not saying that Spencer's was haunted, quote unquote. I'm not saying that demons were all up in that place. They could have been, for all I know. But there's something else that we tend to get entertained by a lot. And we love just, I don't know. It's sad that we as Christians are so entertained by this stuff. We're so intrigued by this stuff, especially the younger people. It's witchcraft and sorcery. Witches exist. And they don't look like what we see on TV. They don't got the green skin with the crooked nose and the long pointy hats. You know, this ain't the Wicked Witch of the East of Wizard of Oz. Or Wizard of the West? I don't know. But anyway, they don't look like that. Witches, which by the way could be either man or woman, they look like you and me. They're out there, you know, wearing regular clothes like you and me. But behind closed doors, they're doing rituals and whatever else they're doing, and they're conjuring up spirits from the other side. And a lot of times these spells that they're casting, these curses, are often designed to hurt people or trying to force people to do something. I've heard stories of people going to the brujerias or the witches to that's witch in Spanish, by the way, a bruja. I've heard stories of people going to witches, you know, to get somebody else to fall in love with them. Or somebody was angry at someone and they went to the witches to cast a spell to make them sick or worse. And there's been plenty of times where people have tried to have witches, or maybe the witches themselves, people who practice witchcraft on the low, low-key practice witchcraft, try to throw that stuff at my church. And I'm gonna tell you, it's crazy because we've seen dead chickens outside of our church, and that's because some witches do use animals to do some of the spells that they do. There's been times where in our church you have to go up up one flight of steps, a small flight of steps, but you have to go up the steps either way. And I remember years ago I went up and I smelled a dead body. Now, I don't know if anyone here listening to this podcast ever had the misfortune of smelling a dead body. It's not pleasant whatsoever. If you think a dead rat smells bad, or you smell a dead cat or a dead dog, a dead human being, it is horrible. It's really bad. And I just remember like standing in the middle of the steps, like looking around, like, why does it smell like that? And on that same day, the pastor took all the youth to the back and spoke about witchcraft and somebody doing witchcraft, either on the church or whatever the case was, and she was warning us to be aware of that and to stay away from that. And that's when it made so much sense, because that's when I said to the pastor, well, I smelled what I smelled. And she believed 100% that was due to somebody trying to do something to the church. And a youth came to me and said, did you really smell that? And blah, blah, blah. And I think it was because that youth may have known something. God forbid. And I'm not mentioning names. Last time I checked, that youth is doing okay. I think that they have a family and all that. But that stuff is real, y'all, and we have to be careful. I understand that in this season, people love Halloween. They love getting scared. Listen, if you heard the podcast about horror movies, I think it's all depending on the kind. I don't mind going to one myself. I understand the adrenaline rush and all that, but there's certain things that I won't watch, and there's certain things that I will not do. And as a believer, as a person who's grown up and matured, I will not go into a haunted house. Not one that's claiming to be legitimate anyway. I wouldn't mind going through, the corn maze and all that stuff. That's harmless to me. But haunted houses, trick-or-treating, the whole issue behind that. As a matter of fact, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think one podcast can do this justice. I think I'm going to follow this up with a part 2. So, because there is a lot to talk about. And I think on the next week's podcast, I'm going to talk about why I don't trick-or-treat anymore, or why I wouldn't take my children trick-or-treating, which, by the way, I have no kids. Ladies, I'm single. I'm shooting my shot. But I'm going to talk about that because, again, this is a multi-layered subject. So, with that being said, I'm going to ask you to keep me in prayer as I continue to talk about this, because it's something that a lot of Christians, unfortunately, like to engage in. And even on Halloween Day, they like to do something called, I think, Harvest, or whatever the case is. I don't know. Listen, I don't know. I believe someone in my church a few years ago tried to promote that, and I don't think that went well. But anyway, we're running out of time, guys. But please, don't seek out spirits with the Ouija board, or don't do stuff like that, guys. Those aren't toys, man. A demon is nothing to be playing with, and like I said, their main goal is to pull you away from God. So hear me when I say this. Those hauntings, they're not, ghosts like, in Scooby-Doo or stuff like that. Those are demons. Those ghosts that are saying, hi, I'm okay, I'm fine, and blah, blah, blah. That's not your grandma. That ain't your uncle. Those are demons messing with you. Don't seek those kind of things out. Because, like I said, you can bring them back home, and that's a spiritual fight you do not want to be in. Because I've seen my pastor cast those things out, and those battles are so tiring. I heard stories of my grandmother battling these things, and listen, again, we're getting close to the end, and this stuff I'll share with you next week, but please, don't do it, guys. It's not worth the risk spiritually. And like I said, if you feel like you're disconnected from God, they may be with you right now. And it's not too late to shake them off, to cast them out of your life. So I pray that with y'all, okay? I pray that you take them out of your life and that you can find peace and solace in God, as opposed to psychics and mediums telling you that these ghosts are talking to you and that just stop. It's ridiculous. All right, guys. So I'll catch you in the next podcast. God bless you guys. I love y'all. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the show. Have a suggestion for the next episode? Want Will to answer a question? Want to recommend a drink or tell him to give the voiceover guy a pay raise?
No!
Then shoot an email at cupofcurious@gmail.com or slide in our DMs on Instagram @cupofcurious. Remember, stay thirsty and stay curious.